Have you ever needed a form that allows users to add unlimited entries, like multiple attendees for an event, or a detailed expense report? With Fillout's new table feature, you can do just that. Currently, the new table field doesn't integrate easily with Airtable or SmartSuite, but using webhooks, you can get that data into those tools dynamically. I'll show you how to do that step by step. Check it out. Welcome back. I'm Zack from InnerDev Solutions. We help businesses streamline their processes using custom no-code tools so you can focus on what matters most. To learn more, you can visit our website, innerdevsolutions.com, or use the link in the description below. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use Fillout's new table feature and connect it with Airtable. You can also go through the same process with SmartSuite. We are going to connect that data or automate that process using webhooks through make.com. And then I'll also quickly run through a configuration that I have set up for Relay, so you could use either tool. But this tutorial, I'll show you how to build from scratch with Make. As I mentioned, it doesn't yet integrate with Airtable or SmartSuite, so we have to go through this process of automating it with a webhook and make.com, Relay, or whatever. But I believe, and my understanding is they will be adding that functionality. I just don't know when yet. The tutorial today is going to focus on an event registration, like a webinar, something like that, where a company can sign up for the webinar. What will happen is there will be one person designated to sign up everyone from their company that's going to attend. So instead of submitting one form for each attendee, the idea is to come in here, be able to select the registration or the webinar, and then you can enter your name, your company, and your email address as the lead contact. And then from there, you can come down to this new table field, and then you'll be able to add multiple entries. So if you have multiple people from your company going to the event or attending the webinar, you come in here, enter the full name and email. And I will show you that there is some other types of fields as well. It's more limited than the rest of Fillout, but there is some additional field types, like a number. As you can see, there's an email, and there's a few other things as well. That's what I will be showing you shortly, but we're going to run through setting up the Airtable base first. Then we're going to get into Fillout and create basically the form that you're seeing here. And then we'll go into make.com and build out the full workflow or scenario. And then I'll show you quickly the Relay.app setup that I have that accomplishes the same thing if you're a Relay user. Few use cases for this type of setup is what you can see here, an event that has multiple attendees being signed up by the same company. So a webinar, sign up of some sort, or some form of registration that can have multiple participants, an expense reimbursement form, product order form, team or staff directory, or some sort of household or family type of form. So sometimes whether it's a school or some other type of event where you as a family, you can go in, the parent usually submits the details, and then this way you can add in all your children or dependents with their names and different information that needs to be submitted on their behalf as well. I'm sure there's plenty of other use cases for it. That's just a few that come to my mind. Now let's get into it. If you don't have an account already, there is links in the description below for Airtable, Fillout, Make, and Relay to set up an account. And with all these accounts, you can get started for free. I've got a base that I've set up or created from scratch. I'm just going to go in here so I know what it is. And this is just going to be the Fillout Tables demo. I'm just going to go in and delete all these fields. This first table, we can call this webinar or registration, something along those lines. So I'll just go with webinar. We can change this to webinar name. We can add in a date field for when this webinar will take place. Go in, we'll add a new table, and we'll call this participants or registrants, anything along those lines. So we'll type in participants. I'll delete all of these. We can add a few in here. Full name, which is just going to be a single line text field. We will want an email, company name, which can also be a single line text field. We'll want to link this to the webinar table, and we're just going to allow linking to one record at this point in time. Now, there is probably going to be a little bit more advanced setup that you're going to do here depending on your specific use case. The point of this tutorial is just really to show you how to get the values from the table submitted from Fillout into a database like Airtable or SmartSuite. And last thing that I want to do is I want to add in the Fillout submission ID. And this can be a single line text field as well. And we'll need this for a reference step within Make. And I'll show you what that looks like shortly. And over here, I'm just going to change this to an auto number because for this tutorial, it doesn't really matter. I'll just label this ID. Now we can go into the webinar here. We'll add in a couple of example webinars. And one other thing that I might want to add is a count field. I can see the number of participants that have registered for that webinar. I've added a couple webinars in here just for some test data. And now we can go into Fillout. Like I said, link in the description below to create an account for free. And we're going to create or make a Fillout. We'll go into Connect. We'll select Airtable. I'm just going to choose the light one for my theme for now. You'll have to authenticate or connect to your account to Airtable. Just click on the drop down here. It will walk you through the steps. Pretty easy. I want to go in, you'll select your base. We can pick our table. And in this case, we want to add participants and we will create the form and we'll just call this Fillout Tables Demo. Hit continue. And then from here, we have some formatting. So I'll drop in a heading. We can just call this webinar sign up. Scroll down, we've got some choices. So this is based on the webinar from this table. If I click this drop down, we can see the 2 different webinars we have available. And I'm going to select it, go over to the options. I want to make this required. We can only select one webinar at a time. And I'm also going to go into the advanced for fields to show. I want to show the webinar name. I also want to show the date. Now, when I come in here and click add, it's only going to display those 2 things, webinar name and the date. If we want, we could filter out webinars that have happened and that are already in the past so that new registrants can't sign up. We could set up some sort of condition based off of the number of participants that have already signed up, but I'm just going to leave it at this for now. 3 other details I want to add is the full name, the company, and the email. And I can come up here and drag this to the side so that they're beside each other nicely. And I want to make each of these a required field. Now you'll see here, there is no field for additional participants that we need to add. And this is where we're going to have to configure this workflow ourselves. This Airtable field, this is just pulling in information based off of the participants table here and the fields that are available. What we need to do is go into other. We can search tables and select this table option. I'm going to label it additional participants. Might want to add some caption text here and just say if additional participants will be joining, add them here. And now we can add the columns. And in this, you can see the types of fields that we can add. There's options for short answer, email, picker, drop down, and number. We're going to keep things simple. We're just going to add a short answer, and this is going to be the full name. And I'm just going to label it name in this case, keep it simple. And the other thing I'm going to add in here is an email input. I'm not going to make this required because it is possible that only one person is going to be signing up from the company. One other thing that I want to do within Fillout is if we go to the Integrate tab, we'll select Airtable. And if we scroll down, we can select a new field to link here. So the Fillout submission ID, we just want to map that to the submission ID. And we'll click Update. And now when the form gets submitted, the Fillout unique ID will get added here for a reference later on. We're going to navigate to make.com. I'm labeling this Fillout table. And the first module we're going to add is a webhook. And we want to select the custom webhook. We can come in here, add a new webhook, and make sure you label it something that makes sense. Hit save. The webhook will populate and we can copy that address to the clipboard and we'll hit save here. Now I'm going to right click and run this module only. It's now listening for a webhook call. And if we go back into Fillout, we can go down here to a webhook. We're going to paste in that webhook that we just copied from Make, and we can give this a test run. And as long as it worked, and you'll see a 200 status code with accepted. If we go back into Make, we can see that the test webhook came through. Click the drop down through submission here, and these are all the data points that we receive. That's it within the webhook section of Fillout. We can finish that setup now. I'm going to publish this, and I'm just going to open up this form, and shortly we'll come back here and add in some test data. So now we can go into Fillout. I'm going to hit this plus icon and add in a sleep module. And the reason for this, when I was testing this setup originally, you'll see here shortly, when I run the find step within Airtable or the search step or module, it did not find what it was looking for because there was a slight delay between Fillout adding the information to Airtable and me looking up the record. And it was only a few milliseconds or maybe a second or two at most. In this case, I'm just going to add in a 3-second delay. And now we can go in and add the next step, which is going to be searching Airtable. Here we can go Airtable, search records, make sure you select the proper connection. Once you've selected connection, you select your base. Now we can select the table, and I want to look up participants. I'm going to find the participant that was submitted via this form. And the way we're going to do that is if we go down to the formula here, and I've selected the output of all fields for this use case, but I now want to find based off of the submission ID. If I go into Airtable and we will copy this field name, we can go back into make. If I wrap this in curly brackets, we can see we have Fillout submission ID is equal to, and in quotes, we'll have to go down to the submission ID. And now that we've passed that in, it will search up that participant that has just been added to that table in Airtable. Next step is going to be an iterator step. This step is a little bit more complicated, and this is where we're going to have to navigate through the questions list within Fillout and then find our specific question that we're looking for, which is additional participants. And then we're going to want to access the value of that question, which is going to be a list of additional participants. And I'll show you how to set that up. We're going to use a get function. And then within the get function, we're going to use a map function. Within the map function, we can go down to questions and pass that in. We're going to hit a semicolon. I'm going to type in value because we want to get the value from that question. And you can see what that looks like here. When we've hit the drop down of questions, there is this value array. Now we want to filter through the questions. So what we actually want to filter by is this ID here. So I'll hit ID, hit the semicolon, and then if it didn't show the correct question here, which it does in our case, and it's additional participants, so we can just type in this ID that's displaying, but I'll show you in a moment what you can do. We can close the brackets, hit a semicolon, hit 1, and then close that out. This is just using the get and map function to basically look into the questions here, find the correct question based off of the ID, and then get the values, which is a list of values. And I can hit save. Now we're going to add another and final Airtable step, and we're simply going to create a record for each item within the list. And you'll want to select your connection, select your base, select table, which is participants, go down to company, and we can pass in the company name that was found in this search records. And if we go to the webinar, we can pass in the webinar ID. We can hit save. I'll save this, and I'm just going to right click on this, add in a note. So this is the format to pass in the values from this module. We can see we have a double curly bracket that we're wrapping in the field name. We're identifying the module number with 4 dot. And then this is just using backticks because it is name or a label that has a space within it. So I'll copy this one and we'll open the note back up, and we can see curly brackets 4 with a dot, period. And then now I've just listed email without the backticks because it's just one word. Now I can copy that, hit OK. We'll open up the email here and paste that in. Hit save, and we can save this scenario. And now if I've set all this up correctly, we can give this a test run. We'll run this once. We're going to go into Airtable. We can see that there is the webinars. without any participants. Those are just blank, so I can delete those. And if we go into Fillout, we can add in a webinar. We can just select whatever one we want there. I will add in my name, a company name, and my email address, and we'll add in a couple of random participants. We have 2 additional participants, and like I said, I should want to verify, and I've got that running. I'll click submit, and we'll see if this works. And I've went back into Make, and looks like each step was successful. I'll navigate into Airtable now, and it looks like it worked for us. So something happened here with the name. I might have mixed up how I added in the name coming from Fillout, but we'll check that in a moment. Within Airtable, we can see that it's added 3 participants, the count of 3 here, and it's got the 3 participants, and everything was passed through and linked properly without this full name. This is just the label or the field name within Airtable. If I go into Fillout, I want to go edit here, and we can see that I did label this as name. If I go back into Make, open up this note here, we can actually get rid of the backticks and just add in name similar to the email down below. Now I'll copy this, hit OK, and backspace and paste that in. Now it will just pass in that name formatted. Now, as I mentioned, we'll click into the webhook, the submission, and the questions. We can see there is a list or 5 different questions available here based off of the setup that I have in Fillout. And what we're doing is in the iterator, we're looking at the questions, and then we're filtering by the ID. And this is the ID that we're filtering by, so that we get the proper question. Then we're getting the value array. And then from the value array, we're going to iterate and add in the information that we see here in Airtable. So you can see that there's 2 operations run at that point. Back into Fillout, I'm just going to hit this run once again. I'll refresh the form and we'll give this a shot. Now I've got my form filled out. If I hit submit, we can go back to Make, and we can see it worked properly. Navigate into Airtable, and we can see that the names were now added properly. Now I'm going to demonstrate the relay automation that I have set up that will handle the same thing. Got the example information in the form. I'll select submit, and if we go into Airtable, we'll see that record got added. And if I go into Relay and select the run that just happened, we can see all the steps that happened. Back in Airtable, those additional records ended up getting added as well. Now, to run through how I have it set up in Relay, I've got a webhook trigger, and it's just a post. I've taken this URL and added it to my Fillout form, similar to the way I did that with Make. If we go into Fillout, we'll go integrate. We can see that we have the webhook here, but all I did, like I said, just the same as Make, pass in that relay webhook. We can give it a test run, and we can authenticate it basically the same way, but I already have that set up here for this form. That's the webhook step in Relay. I've got some custom JavaScript. Basically what we're doing here is based on the information that's passed. And the nice thing about Relay is that when we do that test run, it will bring in all of the inputs set up as needed. Then I go run a custom JavaScript code step. The input is going to be the questions from the webhook. The output is participants, and that's going to be an array. And then it's going to have an object within the array, and that's just going to be name and email. And then if we open the code editor, this is the script that I have written. And this is going to have to change slightly. That's going to be unique to the field ID coming from Fillout. But other than that, everything else can be basically copy and pasted. So pause the video, take a screenshot of this so that you can reference it to set this up in your own Relay workflow. One other thing I forgot to mention is within the webhook, when it gets the input, and you'll see what I mean when you get to this step, but when it gets the input, there was one error. And if we go down to questions, need to toggle this off. If we go down to questions, the value was just a text item. And I found that that did not retrieve the information correctly. If you select value and change this, and like I said, it was originally a text, I just went down and changed it to any JSON data, hit save, and then from there, it seemed to work well for me. The next step is the find record, which is very similar to what we set up here in Make. We're just checking to make sure that the Fillout ID is the Fillout ID coming from Fillout. Then we're using an iterator, and we're going to iterate each participant that we extracted using the code step here in Relay. And then for each participant, we're just adding a new record, and that's going to be full name, email, which is coming from that code step, and then the company and webinar ID coming from this find record step. So very similar to Make, but slightly different because we had to use a code step in this case. That's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for more tutorials in the future.